Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. So
You're very welcome. I'm excited, and I will just say this in general. I'm excited about this event and the opportunity, and to meet you all in November, and then to be in the library. So what I do, I'm a tarot reader and teacher, and so I read cards and teach tarot every day. I run Morbid Anatomy with my colleague Joanna Ebenstein. So we do, events, cultural programming. We support author, researcher, offering them, like a platform to educate people, talk about books. We do exhibition. We have the Morbid Anatomy Library, which is in Industry City in Brooklyn, and so I'm the programming director and librarian, but at this point we both Joanna and I, we kind of do everything from top. It's basically both of us, and then our colleague Christina, Thomas, and Nicole. Tarot has this just convey a lot of my passion into one. I'm very moved by images, and that's why I did art history in the first place. And I believe that images have power, and that not just tarot but all images, and that we have a yearning as human to just kind of bask into powerful images, and I think tarot participate in that, like great universal idea, but it has another element, which is storytelling, so image and stories, and that's another passion of mine. I like to read, I like to watch films, I like any form of storytelling, and I believe that, again, that a good story also has the power to change one's life course, and that's how we find these inspirational role models, and whatever the story is, if it's canon or a story we tell ourselves, and I think that's why tarot is like somehow blends both of those passion. For me, the tarot reading is it really is the art form that I do. I think like every art form, it has the power to change people's life, and it's I like to see it as a poetic art form, a spectacle. It doesn't mean that it's not infused with divine purpose or magic. It's just like instead, me and the card, and maybe an invisible cast of characters are just trying to offer that ephemeral moment, and that people can be touched by it, and then kind of readjust what they need to adjust according to that. So.
Yeah, tarot is very much an art, and when you're doing a reading, it's like you're creating something, and it's only going to exist in that moment, really, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it is a story. That's the thing. It's like a bespoke story that, like I believe that I really believe that stories and images can heal part of us. If you see a picture of a car crash, there's going to be, the moment you look at it, there's going to be a discharge, like you're going to be, like there's going to be like an adrenaline, jump. And I think that, and sometimes images have the power to score you. And I think that the reverse is possible too. I think images have also the power to just have the inverted process, that they can actually allow just by their proximity, just to heal part of us, and then even if we don't see what is to be seen, just the proximity of them can change things. I've read cards like all my life. I started when I was 11, and it was, like I say that too because I don't want people to believe that I was just particularly good at it. That's something that it's a relationship I learned, and it like I had to kind of, how do you call that, like it was like I had to excavate it from, like trying to approach it as like I do things, which is, through some kind of academic learning lens, and I spent my 20s doing a lot of that reading and then trying, and it's just like it never really worked, I was good at it, and I built a body of knowledge, but it's just something changed at some point, and it just it felt like retrieving a language, you know, like it's like it's something I've always spoken, like a mother language, a language I've always spoken that I just found back, you know, and it's just like, okay, well, suddenly when I do this, when I engage my emotion core, so to speak, you know, like I just get it, and everything is in there. But for most of my life, until, you know, I guess fairly recently, tarot was part of a private spiritual practice, you know, like gravitating, I guess, around image magic and shrine making, and, you know, I was just like, I used the card all my life, but not necessarily to read them. You know, this idea of reading the card for prophetic thing was not something that I was really doing. I was, you know, asking the card from time to time stuff, but most likely it was just like, I was like using them as like a symbolic toolbox for things that I needed. But so yeah, like, I mean, there is so much you can do with the cards, you know. And when we're talking about the poetic art form, you know, I know that's the way I see it, but I also know that people use the same tool. You know, I'm a very classic, you know, I read with a Rider-Waite Smith, and a lot of people use it, you know, and a lot of people use it differently, and I found very inspiring trying to understand how they do it, you know, because I think, well, it's genuinely personal approach, and people kind of use that, you know, kind of, yeah, use the tool the way that the tool speaks to them, and the ideas don't cancel each other necessarily.
Yeah, I like that. Everyone kind of brings their own magic, as it were,
Yeah, yeah,
to the cards.
yeah.
Another question for you. How important do you think it is for a reader to learn the traditional symbolism behind the cards?
Ooh, this is a very transgressive question, because I know that people are very opinionated about this. This, I will say this, and I see you have this very beautiful, I guess, Peruvian shawl on your shoulder.
I don't know where it came from.
It looks like I think it looks like Latin American textile work. But so I like to travel a lot, and I like to go. You know, my fantasy is being alone in a place where I don't speak the language, and I can just, you know, be big-eyed and lose myself. And I like to do that when I have the money and time. And it's why I go to Mexico very often, and I like to travel in Mexico because the culture is so rich, you know, and then, like, from one state to the other, traditions are completely different. And I've got, you know, I got tarot, whenever I have an opportunity to get a tarot reading, I will get it, you know, just like, I just love it, especially when I travel. And I've had tarot reading in places where, you know, people never heard about the Golden Dawn, you know. And I had a very interesting reading in Mexico, in like very remote place, and the woman used the Rider-Waite Smith. I can assure you that she never heard about Pamela Coleman Smith or the correspondence system, but the reading was really meaningful to me. Does it cancel it because she had no knowledge? And so my answer is yes and no. And you know, like, the fact is, I believe personally that, of course, I'm going to study the cards because I'm interested in history and I'm interested in filiation. And I also understand that we can't take one slice of tarot history for granted, that we all, you know, they kind of play the musical chair, you know, the things that were said at some point were canceled by the person after, and then we're kind of you know, and it's just like the tarot is you know, like an axis of knowledge that branch in and out all the time. And because I have a kind of I'm a history minded way of understanding the world, I'm interested in it, and I know it helps my practice, but not always. Like, I think to be able to do that work, you need a solid ground of traditional understanding of the tarot. But doesn't mean that, you know, if you read the Rider-Waite Smith and you only study the Golden Dawn, does it mean that you have an understanding of the tarot? Maybe not. You know, I like to understand the lineage of things. So, and I'm also a sucker for, you know, good imagery. So of course I'm going to study the history of tarot. But do you have to kind of you know, that there is also such an interesting thing. It's like, what does it mean? You know, you know, like I don't necessarily trust a person who comes with a stuffy understanding of tarot, because with like, you know, but this author said this and this, you know, it's a very, you know, like I think they're missing out. You know, it's an inner experience. You know,
Yeah.
there is a lot of I think there is a lot of analogy to be done with tarot and music. You know, I think tarot is like music. Tarot is a tool, and then people play it differently. And so people are, in the world you have, Beethoven's and Frank Zappa's, you know, you have people who are people who are improvisers. Doesn't mean that, sometimes to be a better improvisers, you have to understand the knowledge of music, but a lot of music is not created by understanding, composition rules. It's also coming from a different instinct.
Your talk is about the iconography, right? So it's Babel Polyphony on tarot language and forgotten iconography. So yeah, can you tell us what that talk is going to address and maybe what you hope people will take away from it?
The talk is about like some analogies that I've done, and it's not like some analogies I've done with the idea of tarot as a forgotten language, tarot reading cards as articulating a way to address our soul through images and stories. And one of the example I use, which like it's on the floor, I'm moving, so
okay.
The example I use is this great book by Italo Calvino.
Yeah, I love that book.
The Castle of Cross Destinies. People kind of gather in some castle, and they're all kind of roaming around in this forest, and they all lost their voice. And somehow they use a deck of tarot, which is I think the Visconti Sforza, if I remember well. They use the Visconti Sforza to re-articulate their story, and the whole book is about how, by putting cards next to one another, they're refabricating and communicating their story to others. And I think that obviously this is such a beautiful metaphor, but also it's very true. This is what tarot is. It's not so much about reading, deciphering. It's about re-articulating stories. And I think in the history of tarot itself, images work this way, because images meaning changes. The 15th century hangman is not the 2010 hangman, and the images is the same, but it's different. And so the talk is about this. It's about how, although the iconography doesn't change, some of the iconography was reused or pre-existed from the tarot, and how the moment it enters in those miniature cards, somehow it takes a different, the meaning shifts, and then through one generation to the other, the meanings evolve, and tarot itself says as much as our own personal history, also as much as it says about us as a culture. And then when we study the iconography of tarot, we can also read the history of people who use them, as us as a community, as a society. And I found that interesting. And then I like images, so it's going to be an eye candy. And I'm going to show a lot of interesting, historical images, and then entertain you all with beautiful things. So
thank you so much for meeting with me. This was really great, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in person in November.
Me too. I'm so excited. Have a great rest of your day, and
yeah, thanks. You too.
Very soon. Bye bye.